Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and this is about Brexit yet again, delaying the delay. So, the news broke this morning that Theresa May has requested that the European Union delay Brexit yet again. Remember, Brexit Day was supposed to be the 29th of March, so that's a week ago, and now she's saying, can we put it back to 22nd of June, Midsummer's Day, the solstice. And Donald Tusk is amenable to it. However, he requires agreement from all 27 member states. Will they do this again? Of course, this is met with exasperation in many European capitals. So it's not to be taken for granted that they will agree to this. Remember, if the United Kingdom stays in beyond the 22nd of May, the UK is legally obliged to take part in European Union elections. Now, the EU breaks its own laws quite a lot. It's not a Rechtsstaat. In Germany and France, they're breaking the Growth and Stability Pact like willy-nilly. Around about 2002, they were supposed to be fine for that, but they didn't. So the EU is also very flexible. It had arrangements about East Germany. Well, that was the European Economic Community. Joining West Germany, transitional arrangements. Cyprus, they've managed to be imaginative about that, interpret the law creatively. When there's North Cyprus, it's the Republic of Cyprus, so North Cyprus could somehow benefit from the EU despite not really being in the EU, and on and on. So Brexit is becoming a Flexit, as in a flexible exit date. People are feeling jaded with this, and I'm weary of making these videos. The British public is mostly fed up with the way it's been handled, and they just want it over and off their desks, and of course mustn't underestimate the exhaustion some politicians feel about this, but perhaps it's a question of stamina, and the Remainers might sense that if they can just keep delaying it, they can prevent it ever happening. And perhaps the other EU countries think that Britain is a spoilt child. For goodness sake, you put us through this whole rigmarole and you can't make your mind up. Now, maybe fault is not the word. Obviously, if enough people in Parliament had voted for the agreement, could have left, or could have left without an agreement if May hadn't asked for an extension, or the EU member states hadn't granted that extension, or if the EU had offered a more alluring deal, this would have happened. Now, the pound will like the delay in some ways. The suits in the city will slightly like it. I mean, they're mostly against Brexit. They think, ooh, well, at the 11th hour, the United Kingdom might change their mind. And if an agreement is made, even a temporary one, trade arrangements when the UK leaves to last for a year or more, many people say that's better than leaving without an agreement. People always use this pejorative phrase, crash out. Now, obviously, the upside of leaving without an agreement is going to world trade rules and lowering tariffs, which oblige the other countries to lower their tariffs to the same level. But I'm not so confident about this. Some people like ree-mogg approach this with complete sang-froid. And I know that there are benefits to leaving without an agreement or not being part of the common market kind of thing, because then the UK can make trade deals with other countries and on terms which are more advantageous to the UK. Because the trouble with the European Union is there's got to be suitable for everyone. It's never completely suitable for everyone. It might be a deal which really suits Greece but is quite bad for the UK, or vice versa, depending on what one imports and exports. So I approved of one delay, but not another one. This is too long. So the Norway-style deals, again, seems to be the most likely one, but there are pros and cons to that one. Then the United Kingdom will not be able to negotiate trade deals which are more beneficial to the UK. So Theresa May had a positive consultation with the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. Of course, he's taken some stick from his own backbenchers for doing this, and Theresa May's taken some flack from her backbenchers. So in a way, it's making Corbyn more credible. You can't really say he's a boogeyman when you've invited him to Downing Street, and perhaps he's showing himself to be Prime Minister material. Another thing is the Tories are behind in the polls for the first time in ages, 5 percentage points behind. So things are looking up for Labour. There's everything to play for, especially if they can force an early election. Now, I used to say it'd be difficult for them to win outright. At the moment, 5% of the opinion polls, they could just do it. They could have a narrow but workable majority. Now, even if it's very narrow, or even if they slightly miss a majority, they could get confidence to supply with the SNP and or the Lib Dems, or indeed a full-blooded coalition with the Lib Dems. With the SNP, I think that's probably not possible because the SNP won a second referendum on North Britain. Corbyn has said he would be open to that, though. And the SNP want to stay in the European Union. Certainly they care about Caledonia, staying in there. They don't care about South Britain so much. So a Norway-style agreement, in a sense, would have the United Kingdom halfway out of the European Union. But surely that should mollify European enthusiasts in the UK, Europhiles, saying, oh, well, it's not as bad as breaking all our links to the European Union. So I suppose the public has finally lost faith in Theresa May. Not that they had a great deal, but are fed up with the Conservatives not sorting this out. Now, I know Labour has blocked this more than the Conservatives, but, it's the government's job to rule and to get their legislative agenda through. And if they had the DUP on board, they could do this. They do have confidence in supply with them. The DUP have voted against it for various reasons. And Nigel Dodds, though he's an arch Eurosceptic, said as he's worried that this whole thing would jeopardise the Union, as in he feels that Northern Ireland would be too closely aligned to the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland would be more or less separated from Great Britain, so he would rather stay in the EU than run the risk that Northern Ireland would be leaving the UK and joining the Irish Republic. But if the UK is only halfway out of the EU, that raises the possibility that it could go all the way back in, which is what Europhiles would say, saying there's no sense being half in, half out. It might as well be all the way in, because we're not willing to go all the way out. So the more this is delayed, the more the Remainers have time to build their campaign and say, oh, come on, it's been 3 years now, the situation has changed, and we realise that so many deceitful statements were made by Eurosceptics and all the rest of that. So there's been delay after delay, and it may not happen, so that's what they quite like to stall. And nobody seems to think this is going to be disastrous now. Will all the other EU leaders agree to it? I think it's more likely than not. It's definitely not something to take for granted. And then there was a possibility of, how about a 12-month delay? But if the UK ever manages to get its act together and vote on an agreement, then the UK could just leave early. So all the transitional arrangements are in place. The UK's done its impact assessment. What if there is no deal? Get ready. This is a serious possibility of leaving that agreement. The NHS knows that. People have to be able to figure out how they're going to get fruit and vegetables and so on. We used to be told there's going to be no fruit and veg. I don't hear that canard anymore. And that there's going to be a 100-mile tailback at Dover, things like that. That's the main port in southeastern England where trucks go back and forth to the European Union delivering goods and picking up goods. So I don't think it will be that bad. Well, may you live in interesting times, the Chinese used to say. This is a little bit too interesting, but the trouble is there's one issue has just dominated the headlines for ages. Now, Theresa May, I don't think she's someone who's thinking of elongating her stay as Prime Minister, but if she lasts to July, she would have been there for 3 years. She might avoid the ignominy of being the shortest serving Prime Minister since James Callaghan, 1976 to 79. So as I say, I would rather leave on the 12th of April than have this, because I'm just worried that it won't happen at all. It's so hard to say what's going to happen. Perhaps it's a fool's errand to even make forecasts at this stage. The Lib Dems are not managing to make themselves heard. They've been highly ineffectual in this. And as a hardline anti-Brexit party, you think that they might be making the running, but they're definitely not. So that's that. So people are fed up with this. But once Brexit is over, I think she'll resign almost immediately, because people have had it with her. Now, in a sense, she inherited a poisoned chalice, and she was sometimes outfoxed. There were a few false moves from her, but this was never going to be easy, as anybody pretended, like some of the Eurosceptics saying, oh, it'll be the easiest deal ever. There we are. So the UK is supposed to leave in just over 3 months' time, if not slightly earlier. So yeah, I think it's likely to happen. Not hugely likely, but somewhat likely to happen.